At its absolute peak, the Roman Empire blanketed the known world. From the damp moors of northern Britain down to the fringes of the Sahara, it was a hyper-connected network of paved highways, towering aqueducts, and gleaming marble cities. But if you rewind 1,000 years, you don't see marble. You see this, a tiny, unremarkable town of thatched huts sitting in the mud next to a swamp along the river Tiber. It is a gap that seems impossible to bridge. These people didn't start with superior technology or massive wealth, yet they somehow managed to dismantle every other kingdom in the Mediterranean. The Romans themselves looked to their own foundation myth for answers. The story goes that twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, were abandoned by a river, suckled by a wild wolf, and eventually fought over where to build a new town. It ended with Romulus murdering his brother. Left as the sole ruler, Romulus had a plot of land, but almost no citizens. So he declared his new settlement an asylum. He opened the doors to runaways, criminals, and the dispossessed outcasts from all over Italy to populate his streets. The myth is symbolic, but it points to a historical reality. In an era where most cities defined themselves by who they kept out, Rome survived by deciding who to let in. Early warfare in Italy was usually localized, glorified cattle raiding. Every year, local militias would march to a neighboring town, smash it up, steal the livestock, take a few slaves, and go home. The Romans did that too, but they added a legal twist. When they defeated a town, they forced their conquered neighbors into permanent alliances. This map of early Italy shows how that system functioned. Instead of gold, Rome demanded men. Defeated towns legally supplied soldiers. Watching this network expand reveals the mathematical advantage. Every victory yielded troops, fueling the next conquest, creating an overwhelming military pool of 700,000 soldiers. Eventually, this expanding land machine hit a geographic roadblock, the Mediterranean Sea. Across the water sat Carthage, a wealthy superpower with a monopoly on naval warfare. Rome had virtually zero fighting ships, so the Romans improvised. Legend says they found a wrecked Carthaginian ship washed up on a beach, reverse-engineered it, and instantly mass-produced their own fleet. They sailed across the strait, pushed Carthage out of Sicily, and secured their first overseas territory. There was no grand master plan to rule the seas. The Romans hit a wall, adapted their military engine to get over it, and kept moving. By 146 BC, Rome had leveled Carthage entirely and sacked the wealthy Greek city of Corinth. The Mediterranean effectively became a Roman lake. But conquering the Greek world triggered a cultural backfire. As Greek marble statues, literature, and theater flooded into Italy, Greek culture took over Roman identity. The Romans even commissioned epic poetry, like Virgil's Aeneid, to rewrite their own history, linking their origins back to the heroes of the Trojan War to secure a place within the Greek historical tradition. At home, however, the structure of the state was breaking. Rome was still running on a political system built for a single city. A town council cannot manage a multi-continent empire. Campaigns were now happening thousands of miles away and generating unimaginable wealth. Because the soldiers relied on their generals for pay and retirement land, the troops became loyal to their commanders instead of the Roman state. That systemic flaw reached its boiling point with Julius Caesar. Backed into a political corner by his rivals, Caesar marched his loyal, battle-hardened legions across the Rubicon River and into Italy, plunging the state into civil war. The very engine that built Rome, constant outsourced military expansion, crushed the Republic under its own weight. Out of the ensuing chaos emerged Augustus. He dismantled the old democratic committees and cemented a new structure, permanent one-man rule. Augustus wrote the blueprint for every emperor who followed. To keep the throne, you had to pacify the borders, entertain the population with massive spectacles, and launch monumental building projects. But those projects required staggering logistics. By the 1st century AD, the city of Rome swelled to a population of 1 million people. If the emperor failed to import hundreds of millions of tons of grain every year, the population would starve and riot. To solve this, Rome's engineers constructed Portus, a colossal artificial harbor just outside the city, flanked by the largest brick grain warehouses ever seen. Sinking massive port foundations into open ocean required a technological leap. Roman engineers perfected hydraulic concrete, a specialized mix involving volcanic ash called pozzolana. Unlike standard cement, when this mixture hits salt water, a chemical reaction occurs that causes it to harden and cure underwater. This map of the Mediterranean shows the result. With underwater concrete, Roman engineers didn't need natural bays. They could pour harbors directly onto open coastlines, creating trade routes that physically linked remote provinces into one centralized supply chain. And alongside the physical infrastructure, they built a sociological one. Rome steadily granted legal citizenship to the millions of people living in its conquered territories, turning former enemies into participants in the empire. The Roman Empire was not a planned conquest. It was a reactive, violent engine that improvised its way into a continental superpower, reshaping the Mediterranean into a single connected territory where former enemies were eventually transformed into citizens.